Okay, so I'm making the video today and as many days as I can before the end of the year, because I intend to fold up at that time if I can. Now, I also may not be able to get the camcorder up and running to take you. It seems unlikely that I'm going to be able to live stream ever again or take the camcorder that I've got even a block away, just to try to show a type of matrix, certainly a reality where human beings, and I say they're possessed human beings, and I have no doubt about that, just as I have no doubt about the cat or the dog. You know, I don't say this to be clever or to, it's a very diabolical, difficult situation or reality to be in, It's really just a situation in a way, but it is the reality because it's everywhere. Or at least it is so much of the majority. Because, as I've said before, it's a numbers thing. Because it's not about individuals. And also, like myself, for instance, I'm going to be personal here. But, and I'm going to go outside. And the reason I make these videos, what is the point, as was pointed out to me? What is the point of the videos? Well, look, one point of the video, if you're still listening, and I don't care who's listening, because if I'm making a video, I'm really only making it for one. In some ways, I've made my choice in this reality, because at some point you're going to have to put your trust in someone or something, and it might just be the last person. And, 50-50, whatever you want to say, fair enough. But you're going to have to jump off that fence, as I have to, whether I like it or not. I've been a fence sitter all my life. I don't like to make waves. I don't want to have responsibility or any input into this reality. I want nothing to do with it, really. But the reality comes crashing into me, so I'm forced to. Just like I'm forced to deal with on a daily basis. This is the reality. You have children running around everywhere. Children, possessed children, like in The Innocents. Possessed children, like in the Innocents movie. That's like people. They look like people. They look like grown-ups. They look like people of any age. But they are all really children. Possessed children running around in this reality everywhere. All around. They make up the majority of the population. So you have possessed children running this earth matrix or this earth world, whatever you want to say it is. I don't care. Obviously, I'm losing it here. And that's because, I'm dealing with possessed children every day. How do you deal with possessed children? You're supposed to protect children. But you are trying to protect possessed children. And when I say possessed children, these possessed people, which are really possessed children because they are at the age of 6, probably less. I don't know what age, but it would vary. It doesn't matter. But like in The Innocents, you're dealing with possessed children. Except that they look like adults, so that complicates this reality even more. But as you can see, even from the movie The Innocents, it's not easy to unpossess a possessed child, even at a child level. In other words, if you want to look at it this way, and I deal with this, so I know what I'm talking about, even though you might say I'm a ratbag. Same with the cat, and I could prove it too. That's why I can't get the photos up, because that would be like a fact then. Most people would say, well, something going on here. They might say, maybe she's a bit off about the possession, but certainly that's not the same cat. So either way, our reality is messing with us, or what's around you is messing with your animals and what what you would think. Like I say, you go to a hospital, you take something into that hospital, and then you come out with something different, but you don't realise that. Look, I'm going off the track here because obviously, yes, I am upset. I'm not confused, but because I'm upset, that makes me look confused. But I know what I know in my own head. It's just that the Matrix has played me just before I even made the video full time. So of course, yes, that's the whole idea. That's why I make the videos. Yes, I make the videos because they don't want me to make the videos, because I don't want to make them either. But I make them because there is opposition to everything. Because as I've said before, I've been making the videos now for a little while, and I assume that I'm making them for people who know the same as myself, if not more. And even if you know less, if you're already on a path that is away from the Matrix, the Matrix won't have you. You don't have to know everything. I don't know everything. But either way, you have possessed children running around in this reality everywhere. And these possessed children are possessed by entities that don't like the children and don't like me and don't like you. But the child is entertaining, as in The Innocents, these entities. And the child sees these entities that possess their body as a friend, as a kind of comfort, I'm guessing. Like in The Innocents movie, that's a good movie to show that example, because those children saw the two spirits that possess their bodies as their friend. Not only their friend, but their carer that cared about them. Those two entities did not care about the children at all. In fact, their aim was to destroy the two children and take over their bodies completely, so that they could play in this reality to their heart's content and make havoc and do all sorts of things that maybe shouldn't be done. I don't know, because it didn't go that far in the movie, but certainly it showed that the two children were possessed and therefore doing things that children shouldn't and wouldn't want to do normally, but they did want to do it because they had been seduced and taken over by these dark spirits. Because the dark spirits were dark spirits and they did dark things. They were not like normal human beings even that did normal things. They were a negative spirit or a negative entity. And because the children were open to that, desperate, because they were lonely, they felt not safe, not secure, because they had no parents, and they saw them, because children need that. Everyone, the possessed children. Then when these possessed, see, what I'm trying to say is, in that movie, the two children it was great difficulty to get the two children to become unpossessed, or to leave, or to force the dark spirits to leave the bodies of the children, so that the children could be what they really were. The children felt very unsafe without the possession, you see. This is what it comes down to. This is why possession, I think, happens with children when they're young, because, and I know this because I have been part of all this, and I see it full blown now. But if it's very hard to successfully get a dark spirit or a negative entity to leave the body of something when it has only been there a little time, a child, for instance, imagine that it is almost impossible if that entity has been inside the body of a child that then becomes an adult, because that's what we have in this reality now. We have adults that are really children running around controlling the matrix, that are children inside the body of an adult that are totally possessed by negative entities, by destructive negative entities that are only here to suppress, control and destroy me, you and any unpossessed humans that are in small numbers left in this earth matrix. That's putting it bluntly. That's putting it bluntly. And these entities are even inside all animals, or most animals too. So even if you said, well, look, I'll avoid the possessed adults because they naturally do have a lot more power. But you can still have animals that are possessed too, so they will have less power over you, only because they're inside the body of an animal, and an animal by its very nature cannot destroy you with words, cannot physically totally take you over, by and large, like even the cat. I should be able to control the cat at a physical level. But even that would depend on, because see, in this possession reality, the animals are dependent on you for food. So that's why the cat, even though it's possessed, doesn't turn right against me, because if it does, its body would die, because then I wouldn't be able to feed it. So there's a certain common sense even to the negative entities that possess the body, because they want to keep the body going so that they can stay in the body and possess the body, and then possess you and me, or control you and me, or make you and me. Because don't forget, as has been pointed out, these negative entities do feed off, and I know this for a fact, because otherwise why do they do it? Why am I always put into a state of fear, anxiety and being upset all the time? Because they could suppress you without making you angry, without driving you to the point of no return almost. I mentioned I did put a video out quite a long time ago where I had dealt with the dog. And I felt so bad about being driven to the brink of wanting to harm, because this whole situation, that is the whole point too, is to bring human beings to the point of to where they will do things that they don't want to do. In other words, if you want to protect an animal, or you wanted to protect a child, because don't forget, even the adults are really children. But if that child is in an adult body, and that adult is trying to destroy you, your natural reaction is to protect yourself, to defend yourself, and to want to destroy what is going to destroy you. So it is a catch-22. That's why I say it's catch-22, and that's why I say it's it's checkmate because, I mean, sorry about that, Sean, but look, it's checkmate for those reasons. I mean, I nearly had checkmate just a few hours ago. Oh, okay, so I'm still here. But the fact that you're still here, it's checkmate on the reality. Just because I'm still here, well, that's something, okay. But but it's still, there is no good vibration. There is no frequency rising, shall we say, to where anyone is waking up or seeing the true reality, or to where there is or where there is potential to unite, because the numbers of real people are small and the numbers of the possessed minions are vast. They outnumber humans by a huge amount, even at a local level. Like, I don't actually know 100% who is who or what is what, but I kind of do. But, like if you've got, like you're looking at, like in my own local area, because I will use that as an example, as a numbers indication. And it would vary from area to area, no doubt. So I only have my own small domain to go on. Maybe yous might know worldwide numbers or what the real situation is. I have had information given to me that will use some numbers to say that there are a certain number of humans that are in the end time scenario, but I don't do that because I don't know these things for sure. But it doesn't matter, but I know, but I still will agree with that, but I just won't say it because until I know something 100%, and because it's new to me, because and the sources. Look, there is truth from so many sources. There's truth from, it's like if you have a couple of books, there will be, like I always say, everything's a fairy tale. But even in the fairy tales, you have much truth. In fact, the whole fairy tale could be true, but even if it's not, you will get bits of truth. It's up to each person to know what is the true part of the fairy tales, because we do live in a fairy tale in a way, but there is a reality to the fairy tale. I think that if you are very alert, shall we say, and become become, just throw out, well, what I would say is if you just throw out what you've been told or what you think you already know and just almost go on what that word they use these days resonates with you. In other words, just what comes to you, to where you say, yes, I think this is definitely so. Because it's a bit like the synchronicity, right, that I've mentioned. And that's very true. The synchronicity is there. And if I look at it, I pointed that out by showing you the silly examples in the kitchen, but if I look at any object, anything that's around me, and I read what it says, and then I take that at face value, but then I get the other message or the other indication that relates to me personally only to me personally. But it could relate to you too, because if you are not possessed, not of the possessed vast population, then that will, that should give you a personal message. You should be able to say that's what it really means to yourself. It won't mean anything to a possessed person or to those of the matrix. No, it will just be whatever it appears to be superficially. But you won't have to think about it. It will just come to you. It'll just be there. It'll just be there in black and white almost. But, you will know what it means. And if you don't, that just means that you're not picking up on that. You're not picking up on the synchronicity. Or maybe, but you should be able to. But that also will depend on how, where you are at this time too, because like I say, see, I'm just going to ramble here for a bit and then I'm going to go outside for the usual thing. I was just going to say that, see, you'd say, well, how do I know about synchronicity? Well, I'll tell you how. I'll just tell you from my own personal experience, and you can laugh or think it's whatever. But synchronicity was also revealed to me. And I use the word synchronicity because that's what the more knowledgeable or thinkers, or I don't know, I really don't. But all I can say is that's just a word that is used by those so-called in the know, but I'm going to go with it because I know it's so. But it's just a word. But the synchronicity was revealed to me very early on when the matrix opened up, or when things started to change, in other words, to when you notice that there's cars that shouldn't be there and stuff like that, okay? Early on. And it was a simple thing, I'll tell you it exactly, because I remember it vividly, And at the time I didn't take it too serious, but I still knew what it was. I just didn't put the word synchronicity on it, okay? I'll tell you what it was. It was a simple thing, just simple like looking at the jars you might have in your kitchen, or the things that you might buy, the drinks you might drink, whatever. Doesn't matter. I'm getting too fast here. But I am a bit hyped up. I'm agitated because I've been stressed by the matrix, that's all, or the matrix. And when I say the matrix, it doesn't have to be the whole matrix. It could be one person even. It could be the dog, it could be anything, but it could also be a combination, because don't forget, and I could be wrong about this, these negative forces that are all around, these possessed people that are all around, also are influencing other possessed people, because a lot of possessed people don't know they're possessed, don't know that they're part of the matrix. I'm guessing that. Others do know they're part of the matrix, and they're a collaborative effort working with one another against individual human beings, and even against using other possessed people to suppress human beings. I don't know if I put that. I could use specific personal examples, but I'm not going to, because it's just a bit too full on for me. But the synchronicity, it's getting dark. I should have been out there before dark. But the synchronicity, I'll just explain this, and I know it's irrelevant. What's the point? Yeah, I obviously that got to me when someone said, what's the point in making the videos? I guess I assumed that people knew what the point was, even if it was only just desperate sharing because there's no one else to ramble to. Yes, there is even that. But hey, that's a good thing in a way, because there is so little left. Because if you are very isolated and surrounded by possessed negative people, and even those that you might think aren't possessed, they're still not, you can't discuss a matrix. Like, there could even theoretically be some people, even in my area, that are not possessed. But it's not like I could be talking like I am now and say, talking about a matrix or about a total control system of this earth, or about possession of other human beings and stuff. No. So you see what I'm saying? So it is just a common link, a common connection, a desperate common connection, really. Matchstick in the dark, as a video used to say. You're looking for another matchstick in the dark. And I believe I found one, but the light is too far away. And, it is very much like it really is grasping at straws, and it really is. But what else can you do at this time? That's how I look at it now. I wouldn't have believed that I would be saying any of this or grasping at straws. communicating with people you hardly know that may or may not, and that think maybe I'm 50-50. Because we're also confused too, because if you are surrounded by all this possession and stuff, it doesn't make you think clearly, and it makes you very untrusting, which is the reality, because you're talking about a numbers thing, so you will have to take a chance. Matrix people have no trouble gambling and taking chances. They gamble every day. Their whole life is based on living in the moment and gambling and just throwing out the emotions and throwing out any attack they want to, doing anything they feel like doing. They have no problem with that. But because we are real human beings, we are a little bit more careful. But that carefulness now will play against us too. The Matrix will win another round because we will be so careful. We'll be, even if we're confronted with a real human being, and it's not like we're going to get many chances at that. We'll we'll be like, oh well, could be possessed, could be this, could be, a disciple of the Matrix. The numbers are small. Everyone is a great actor. It really you really will have to be so fine-tuned to be able to discern what is the real from the false that it will be difficult. And you'll be looking for certain cues, and like I say, remember how I mentioned the symbolism. Like I'm doing it every day when I move my mobile around, and yet I have no association with the God entity. I don't know the God entity. I know its reality, and I don't like it in any way. I'm sure that even some of you see some positive notes in this reality. Well, of course I do see some positive things happen, but I know they are only the product of human input, and I know that they will be used by the Matrix in a negative way probably, because I do see it as game over. At this earth level, I don't think that there's a lot of hope for salvaging the actual earth and its beings and its life. Most of it is not real life anyway, or not life that's the same as myself. Now, I'm not going to discriminate or distinguish between life forms. I've always said I don't care. But if that supposed life is destructive towards you and destructive towards real life, that's where I take a different view. Because as much as I don't think that technology is a beneficial thing, you could still have technology if it was benign or not destructive in your reality. It may not be the best, or it may not be desirable, but it need not be a total destructive negative force. But it is. It is though. Because, the beings that even possess people are technological and they are anti-life. So that's where you have to then jump, shall we say, off the fence and say, you can't have it. But of course we do have it because it's already taken over. There's nothing I can do about the takeover. There's nothing I can do about their intrusion into my reality or into my life. Their whole aim is to take my life from me. And they do that on a daily basis. And they don't want you to feel that you are life. They want you to feel that you're dead like they are. They're dead only in the sense, of course they do things and they think, but they are always negative. They're always, everything that is around us, especially on the internet, on the computer, and everything that is around us in reality is at a low vibration or angry and unhappy. And their aim is to make already negative human beings, because even at my lowest level, it is still higher than those possessed beings that are around me, possessed people, possessed children that are around me, possessed animals that are around me. They don't enjoy anything at all. The only enjoyment they get is making you at the same level as them, or trying to take your vibration and your little bit of any enjoyment that you might have, they will take from you one way or another. That is how petty they are, that is how negative they are, that is the God being and its minions. Their only joy is in suppressing human beings and controlling them and taking them down into their hell negative reality, so that they're not alone in their hell negative reality, and so that they can, basically gloat, which they do. They gloat. It won't help them in the long run. No, probably not. This matrix has already been played out, I think. It's already been finished. It is finished, but because of some sort of time confusion, because we don't understand time. Maybe time has been extended somehow for real life to somehow I don't know, try to I better close off. I don't no, I won't close off. I'll go outside. I've just because I have been played by the Matrix before I make the video. That is the whole purpose. Is they want to convolute you to where you don't say what you really want to say. Eventually I will say it all, or even prove some of it. Not that it matters. Perhaps it doesn't really matter. Because if as was pointed out to me, if you just know yourself and at least try to get back on your own path to where, I've been on the wrong path completely. And some of it, the old karma thing they talk about, some of that is true too. You are being slapped in the face with your negative actions over a lifetime. But at the same time, because you now see the results of total anti-life and possession and all these things. Possession is really just anti-life. But I don't know what I'm talking about here because that just come to me. But the possession is just because you see that people are not what they appear to be. That they've got a false facade up and that they're hiding a dark secret. Shush, a dark secret. And that dark secret is their possession. Like the children, we're always saying we must keep the secret in the innocence. We must shush. We mustn't tell anyone. And that is what most people are hiding, is the dark secret that they're all possessed. Probably some of them don't know that everyone else is possessed, though, too. I'm guessing this. This seems to be what I observe, because the God entity has even possessed people playing one against the other. So you do have chaos. And I mentioned chaos because chaos is up on the billboard. See, if I had the camcorder, I could actually show you the billboard, which is just down the road here, the great big billboard, where it says, because I was actually hoping to show it to you because the pictures speak better than my ramblings and words, but I probably will not be able to get that camcorder up and running. It's working, it's got the card in it, but no one is going to put a computer and just do a few simple things, which probably only take a few minutes, but I cannot get anyone to do it for me. Because you're not going to get possessed people who unconsciously or consciously are working for or are playing for the Matrix God entity and its minions, and its disciples. These are, you could say they're a bunch of gods, a group of gods, but different names. You can put whatever names you want on them. As they have probably been here since the beginning of time almost, well, not of time, but, well, I don't even know. How do I know? I assume they have been here as long as this Earth Matrix, and maybe even before an Earth Matrix, if there was a real world. I know that things have changed. I just don't know if it was ever real, or if it wasn't natural, should I say. Is there a natural world somewhere? I know we should be in a natural world if we're a natural being. And I tend to like that. I tend to think that's how you should be. Only if you are that being. A technological being is never going to be a natural being. So it's, it's like everything else. And just because things look natural doesn't mean, if you have possession, even of an animal, it still looks like a natural animal. But it's really possessed by a technological being. So it really isn't natural. But, it will play with my mind and yours in convincing you that it is. And because you believe what you see, and you can only see the natural animal, you find it very hard to accept that it really isn't. In fact, if you're a real human, you not only find it hard, but you don't want to, and you still, unless that, it takes a lot, particularly when you've got plausible circumstances that will convince you to accept the reasons for negative behaviour, even from an animal, even though it's really possession. You'll say, well, if the animal does this or that, it's because of this, because humans are like that, and there is truth to that. But that is just the human being played by the Matrix and by the technological beings that are possessing the bodies of people and animals. Because if you saw them for what they really are, you would have no doubt. But it is a mind game. A mind game which I succumb to, as you know, because my only friend is a technologically possessed cat. best of a bad bunch, because the technologically possessed cat still, runs rings around at a friendly level to the technologically possessed people that are running around me. Oh, there's no comparison. The cat at the least could perhaps scratch me. It never has. Or accidentally trip me over, whether it be, but it really can do me very little harm. Maybe it's not good to have that negative kind of energy around, but hey, I think the cat is small, and when you consider the minions that are around me, it's a joke. So that's why, so anyone that says, hey, why have you got a possessed animal? Well, I can't get rid of some of them anyway. And it goes against my beliefs or my, dare I say, principles, even though I don't like to be up myself by talking about principles. But I've always said I can never get rid of an animal. Mercy, killing, all that sort of stuff, don't buy into it, can't do it. Even though I myself have almost been driven to want to do these things myself at times. And that's the Matrix, when the Matrix is checkmating you and winning big time. And it does that to me quite a lot. And then you feel bad because you know that you've been psychologically licked by the Matrix, and you know that you have been brought to an anger state which brings the frequency down of yourself and does not allow for any projection of anything good. Not that I think you can communicate much at the present time. A bit like one of my little Matrix local ones said, even in the video, there are radio waves coming out of the houses. Well, yes, and they know it because they are part of the radio waves. They understand this. Why would anyone say this? To be quite frank. I've never even heard that myself. I know there are frequencies coming into the house, and I know there are frequencies coming out of houses because I can hear them. That's not just sound and noise. I could take you right down the road right now, just a block or two away, just down onto the main street, which is just round the corner. And for months and months now, if you go there at 3 o'clock in the morning even, walk past, there's a house there that is sending out strange sound waves. It's not like round here where you've got jackhammers going and work being done to where it's really noisy. No, people ignore it. In fact, most of them are asleep, so they can't hear it. It's not loud, but it is a sound coming out of a house that is not natural and is disturbing. And it is coming out of many houses. And I'm getting upset here. It's been coming out of a house down there, and if I had the camcorder, I could take you, and maybe if it had good sound, it would need to have pretty good sound, it would come out. But it's not like, as I said before, these videos and things need quite loud sound for them to come out on a video to prove it. But I can hear it, and anyone who walked with me could hear it. If you walk with me right now, you would hear it. And particularly when it is dark, because then there is less, and particularly the later it is. But I'm not getting sidetracked by lights going through the window where neighbours are coming up and down the side. I will go out in a minute. Yes, I'm getting angry, and I'm sorry, and that's bad. I should be laughing it off, but I have just dealt with negative, possessed people. Now, I mentioned that place where there is definite sounds coming out. A neighbour said radio waves. They seem to know more than me. I don't know anything about any of these things. I hear them, I sense them, but I don't know what they actually are. I know they're technology. They're not natural sounds. They're not like a bird twerping on top of the roof, even though a lot of things are, of course, controlled by the Matrix. I was aware of that early, even before the Matrix, but I didn't know what to make of it. I'm supposed to be outside, and yet here I'm making a regular video, and as you can see, I'm too upset to really be making it. because I should just be outside, because it's better to be active if you're agitated. Even though to go out there certainly is not positive either. But when I went down the back street, away from the main street where there is this sound coming out of this place, it's coming out right this very minute. It's not real loud, but it is coming out all the time. And if you go there, like the later you go, you will notice it even more because there's less traffic. So therefore you hear it more pronounced. And that is there. They don't mind me being aware of it. I've been aware of it for months and months and months. Probably a year now. At first, when I first heard it, I thought, what is going on? Of course, I already know what's going on to some extent, but even I'm still surprised when I see the Matrix allowing things that don't fit the reality, because normally they only do things where there is a plausible reason. Like if they're doing work and they send out negative frequency and vibration or even noise and sound, you can't say anything because they say, hey, we're doing some work here. But when it's just coming out of a house in the middle of the night for no reason, it's not like if you go there, you wonder what it is. And this has happened to me many times. It also happened to me with a truck that was parked around the other street, because I sometimes will go down the back way to avoid the main street. The back way should be quiet. It used to be quite quiet where there were very few cars and you hardly ever saw anyone. Not now, no, not since the Matrix opened up. But the other night when I went past just at the top of the park here, just down the corner, there was a car parked there and there were strange noises coming out of a car that had no one in it, that was stationary. It was still there when I come back. But strange noises coming out of it, a mechanical type of noise. And when I went further down, because the Matrix couldn't get me, and I say this is because it is about getting you, because they, at that particular day, because of the time that I went down, see, the Matrix will get you one way or another. It has all bases covered. If it can't get you by making the obvious, or even if it can't get you with a lot of traffic, or if you've decided to try to ignore that, whatever all these obstacles that it puts in your path, it will come up with something else. But it will always have you aware of the Matrix. And this was pointed out very well by someone else that made a video that I don't think they make videos anymore, and I won't go into it. But, someone who also is suppressed by the Matrix, who'd made a video and was trying to show the physical Matrix. Not doing it very well, though, just as I don't, because it is so hard to do that. Walking around with a mobile, showing people supposedly following you, or cars making a bit more noise and drive. It, to the average person, or not to the average person, because the average person is a possessed person who either doesn't want to know, who consciously or unconsciously is part of the Matrix, if you want to look at it that way. Most of them are actually not only consciously part of it, because they are the people that are driving the cars, they are the people walking around, they're the people connecting with those people, telling people where people are, all this sort of stuff. It has to be. It's all a big connection. It's a network, as they say, just like they say the internet's a network. Well, maybe they tell you these things because they know that it's so. Except that it's much more vast than what people realise, or at least what I realise and what maybe you realise. Well, maybe you do realise, but I didn't. But either way, yeah, there was, there again, very low. It wasn't loud, but there were strange noises coming out from a house further down, because I actually looked and thought, hey, there's very few people around. This is good. Not so many cars coming down the street. And then the strange noises come out of the house. Since when do strange noises come out of houses? That just proves a Matrix, but you'd have to be with me to hear it. And it only happens when the Matrix doesn't put on other things. But it's showing you what it can do. It's showing you that every house is a Matrix house, which I already know. And that most people are Matrix people. And for all I know, they're operating particular devices that send these things out, because I'm not sure if there has to be consent. There probably does. You know, and what if they're even real people? You know, I mean, like to where they are convinced that what they do is a positive. You know, I mean, I don't know. But it's a very sad reality. That's really all I can say. And it is, but either way, I'll just get back to the synchronicity, the example that I was going to use. I'm talking too fast here because I've been around Matrix people that are talking 200 miles an hour in order to turn you into like them, to where you're confused and don't know what you're talking about. Because most of them sound good, but they actually don't know what they're talking about. The ones on the internet do, because although they're programmed, they make sense, because they're like a technological kind of mind that can decipher the human thinking and its talk. And it makes sense, because then it seduces the few remaining real humans into, well, like following the demigods or any that are really of the Matrix. I don't know if I put that right. And I think you can see that I'm a bit flushed. Well, see, this is high blood pressure almost. I've never had blood pressure in my life, but I probably have it right now, which is strange. It's almost impossible to make me have high blood pressure. But, you know, if the Matrix tries hard enough, it can get even those that it normally can't get. And that's the same with health and everything, you know, because they have to go to more extreme measures to bring you down, basically. But I still say that if you're at a high spiritual level, it's a lot harder. And this is the only reason that I talk about this, or at least go along that line, because I do think that if you are at a higher spiritual level, but the Matrix endeavours to keep you at a low frequency, low spiritual level, you know, all the time, you know, and then they can weave their way in at all levels, physical, mental, emotional, and all levels, you know, because if you are at a higher spiritual level, even the physical can be, you can have a protection against even the physical more, I think. I think that is so only from my own personal experience, because you wonder why you can experience more physical discomfort, shall we say, to put it mildly, at some times than others. Of course, the Matrix does play too, so, you know, it's like a cat playing with a mouse, isn't it? You know, when they want to kill them, some of them like to really prolong it. You know, they might just go up and not really hurt the animal too much, but it's still enough to make them slow down a bit, all this sort of thing. It's like that. The Matrix is like a cat playing with a mouse, with human beings, really. This was pointed out in a movie that Sean recommended to me called Bird on a Wire, or World on a Wire, should I say, World on a Wire, where towards the end, when the fella knows he's in a matrix and he knows he is going to be eliminated, and the girl that likes him actually says to him, because she knows the controller of the matrix, she knows she calls him a megalomaniac. She said he's a megalomaniac, even though she was actually in cahoots with him. She was almost like his wife, but she had befriended the main fella in the movie, who was, because they wanted to get rid of him, right? Because he became aware of the matrix and he didn't like it. But they could have just got rid of him straight away. She said that to him. She said, oh, they already knew they wanted to get rid of you a fair while ago, but they kept you playing because the megalomaniac that runs the matrix enjoyed your suffering, enjoyed playing with you like a cat with a mouse, enjoyed seeing your distress at even finding out the true reality that you were really in a matrix, an artificial world. and that you weren't in control like you thought you were, because you thought you were the runner of the Matrix, because he was the one who supposedly in this movie created this artificial world, this small artificial world that he had control of. But really he was a man who had created an artificial world, but he also was really in an artificial world. That was the joke of it, kind of. But when he realised that, the megalomaniac, as she called him, that actually ran his artificial world, where he thought he controlled another artificial world, played and toyed with him until he finally, killed him. But anyway, that's the same thing. That's a similar thing that happens to humans in this reality. So it kind of matters not if you realise there's a matrix or not. In fact, it may be a disadvantage, because then the matrix will come further down on you, or should, because it won't want you to tell others that there's a matrix, because because then the matrix is largely controlled because of ignorance, or being kept in the dark, really, as we all are. Because if you think you're in a totally different world to what you are, and you don't know who's really running the show, and you think you're running the show, even as a human being, if you think you've got your own life, you're living in fairyland. You have no life. Someone said to me, get on with your life, forget about the matrix, ignore all the disturbances, ignore the matrix. Well, of course, that's exactly what you want to do, and that's exactly what you've tried to do. But you have no life once this matrix opens up, closes down. That is the whole point. They don't want you. Of course, they don't want you to have a life. That is true. Yes, this person was right. They don't want you to be happy. That is the sole aim, of course. But, how can you be happy in an artificially controlled world where you have no room to maneuver or to even move? Like if you're walking down the street and you feel as though you are surrounded by possessed people, which is like negative entities that dislike you and want to actually destroy you, I hate to say this, but you would need to be a genius at a spiritual level to accomplish that, I would say. And if you are doing that, and if you're able to, I actually assume that it depends on how much the matrix comes down too. I could be wrong about that, because while it's only playing with you a little bit, you probably can delude yourself that you can get on top of it. But the matrix will wait its time, don't forget. Also, it could depend on your circumstances. I've always said that I'm a bit of a sitting duck. That's true, that if you have just by accident ended up in a certain area where gradually people have been phased out of that area, and to where everything around you is very much set up and controlled 100%, and to where they don't even mind you seeing it, because everyone is in sync with the matrix. Everyone is in on the joke, in on the game, shall we say. Whereas if you are in another area where only some people are in on the game, and there are still a lot of real humans around, yes, you might be lucky enough to be able to live and get on top of the matrix a little bit, or at least just live. Yeah, so I get that advice, and I think it is true, and it is very good advice. But it will depend on your circumstances how much you are going to be able to pull that off, to actually live in a mind and physically controlled matrix. If you see it as a challenge and as a spiritual test, as some people have pointed out, yes, you might be able to get on top of it more too. I do try to do that. Obviously, my whole life I have not went along that line much, so it is hard. But yes, I do try to do that. But I have to admit that I do take even low. Yes, that but it doesn't make it easier or harder if you think that, to know that people are possessed. So therefore you shouldn't take them seriously. But to know that they're possessed and destructive, how can you not take them seriously? You know what I mean? So it's like that. It is very much a catch-22. You're doomed if you do, and you're doomed if you don't. Everything is dependent on one another. One thing affects the other. It's like that. And as human beings, if you weren't a human being, if you were really a technological being of the Matrix, they would actually lap some of this up because they're deranged. They like the limelight. They're happy to drag half of Leichhardt around with them. They don't care if you're perving on them and seeing every intimate thing you do and are disgusting and filthy. They don't care. They love that. As long as they got the limelight, as long as they got the attention, because they're deranged, because they're psychopaths. But as a human being, if you are a human being, there's no way that you could tolerate that or say that that is part of life and that it is okay and you can just ignore it. No, because if you're a real human being, you're sensitive to what's around you. That's what a human being is, their frequency and vibration. You see? So it's not just possible to do that. You need to become a lot more like the beings of the Matrix, and then they win too, in order to ignore the beings of the Matrix. You need to be able to walk down the street and say, oh, this is great. This is great that I've got all this noise going on and all this thing, because that acknowledges that I'm important. It doesn't matter that it's giving me a headache and creating that, because that's only if you're a human, you see. But see, if you're not a human being, maybe it doesn't give you a headache to have your head bombarded with all these negative frequencies, noise, and all this continual. You want some peace and quiet if you're a real human being. Yeah, you don't mind a bit of activity now and again. That makes for interest in life, but you don't want it 24/7. Want to rest and sleep sometime. In fact, for me, it is absolutely the worst, because I shouldn't divulge this, but I'm going to anyway, just to, prove some sort of point. No, perhaps I won't even, because I feel that, you're of the Matrix even when you're making this video, because you're talking to a lot of people. But a lot of people is a handful of people, so maybe in my case it is okay. But if I thought I was talking to a huge number, because I would realise that out of that huge number, if there was a lot of people, that most of them would be of the Matrix, or at least just playing with even the idea of these videos, even just playing with the idea of talking about all this stuff, which is what has been thrown up to me too, and it's so true. But if you're talking to just one person, but if I make the video, I think I'm talking to one person. And I am just talking to one person, really. But if there's a few others that are similar, and they get a bit of comfort out of it, or a bit of support, knowing that someone said, not alone in this realm. This was said a long time ago when someone left a comment. And I should have replied to it, but I don't reply to things. But I do notice them. I don't reply for various reasons, but also I'm just not used to it, But either way, I get back to the synchronicity. I'll forget about the thing that I was going to make about how I felt about life before the Matrix opened up, because I used to actually say this out loud to myself. Like, I used to actually say I would prefer a reality where if I walk down the street, I am invisible, I don't exist. So that showed you how self-conscious I was before in my being. See, Matrix people have to be acknowledged, they have to be noticed. And that's normal to some extent for humans to want that interaction, but actually I didn't actually want that, because I actually, when I went out, I did, and now I realise maybe I was sensing something about people, because it does seem strange to me that I would have thought that. I actually said I prefer to be invisible. I wish I was actually invisible. So when the Matrix opens up, it's the complete reverse. You're not only not invisible, you've got every single person almost around you pinpointing you. So as you can see, for someone like myself, this reality now is a nightmare. Totally. You know, I used to be quite happy. That's why I used to walk late of a night a lot, because there were less people around. In fact, sometimes I could go down the street and not see people, and I used to think that was wonderful, because it was a kind of peace, you know, especially if you're in a city. You know, like if you choose to talk to someone, have company, that's one thing, but you don't want people around you that you don't know lurking around and you know, why would you? You know, I don't know what point I'm making here. I really should. That showed you how extreme I was in the other direction, because most people wouldn't be as extreme to me. Most people would, you know, in fact, a normal human being should be happy to just walk around and say hello to people and be, you know, not feel intimidated one way or the other. But now I would say it's an absolute essential for me to be invisible. And yet you can't be invisible, because you are literally on their radar all the time. But that's why I say Matrix possessed people, they don't get that. They actually hate you even more for being suppressed by them and the Matrix, because they're like, oh. It's a bit like it's a terrible thing to be stalked. We all know that, right? We all know that. To be stalked, say, for one person is regarded as a terrible thing if it was in the media or you know, or in some movie or on the thing. But don't forget, to the stalker, you are still the object of adulation or attention, because the stalker's deranged in his mind and has an obsession with a particular person, even though that person wants to be left alone, doesn't want that stalker stalking them or being in their vicinity or anywhere near them. You know, whereas to the stalker, that person is the be and end all. They're obsessed with them. And this is what we have in this world now. You know, we have possessed people who want to be stalked, but they are not stalked because they are possessed of the Matrix, so they are just the minions of the Matrix. And they are trying to possess real human beings or take them over or suppress them. They can't possess them, but they can possess them by controlling them, by subduing them, by directing their daily activities, by making them angry, by making them agitated, by making them annoyed, by making them almost as deranged as what they are, because they are psychopathic. They are deranged. They do not have a sane, logical mind in any way. They don't think that way. They have no feelings about. All they have is envy and hate. And we're surrounded by that. And human beings don't like to be surrounded by hate. Even if you're an unloving person and you say, I can get by without a relationship, you still can't stand hate. I've always said that. I used to say, that was another thing I used to say years ago. I said, I don't want to be loved, but I don't want to be hated. Just be indifferent to me. Let me be invisible, because then at least I can just get about. You know, I don't expect to be on top of the world, but I can't stand to be hated either, because that would bring me down. You know, that would make me uncomfortable, as you can imagine. I don't need to have the love now either, because it's too much trouble. And of course, when you realise you're surrounded by mainly psychopathic people, you realise, like my father said, that it's looking for a needle in a haystack anyway. You know, and all things being equal, even two real human beings are not always going to be compatible. You know, like, okay, so I'm talking to people. I won't go on, this is too personal, but I'll just go back to the synchronicity. Okay, the synchronicity, when the Matrix first opened up, long before I figured out what it was, long before I knew it was a matrix, where I just thought it was human beings that are being misguided and are part of some sort of gang or community where they have decided to make life difficult and uncomfortable for particular people, me and maybe some others that I'm not aware of. And I thought I didn't know what their reasons were. I didn't know what sort of community or group or sect or cult or whatever it is they are, but I knew that they were all combined because I knew that they were like a lot of people that were around. But I remember walking past, when I was trying to get away from the Matrix patrollers back then. And I walked down this street and this place had a garden. And I just looked at the roses as I was walking past. And this showed me synchronicity because I just looked at one of the roses. I hardly even stopped, but it had you know how roses, when they're newly put in, they always have a tag that has the name of the flower on it. And I'm not a flower person or whatever, but I looked at the rose and the tag was left right face up to where I couldn't help but see it. And even though I hardly stopped, I read what was written on it. The Matrix does that deliberately. But in the past, I would have just thought, oh yeah, interesting name. But at the time, when I read it, I immediately knew that it was telling me what I was doing at the time, because the name on that reflected what I had been doing at that time. It was like, like where you just get that a brainwave sort of thing where you're like, oh, that's just showing me that I'm a fool because what was written on there was making mockery and a joke of what I was doing at the time. I'm not going to put into details what it actually was because it's too personal and, you probably would get it, but I'd have to tell you personal stuff, and I just don't want to for the video. I know I usually am, but it just gets too much. But essentially I knew that it was some sort of synchronicity, or that was deliberately left there and that it made sense. I didn't use the word synchronicity then because I hadn't found it out, but I knew instantly that it was that I was dealing with a type of that someone had deliberately put it there for me to see, to make mockery. I knew it wasn't accidental, just a coincidence that it reflected what was happening to me at the time. Also, I can remember a similar synchronicity at that same time when I walked past a shop. And I had started to realise that I needed to connect. There again, I was tricked at the time, I might add. I openly admit that I was tricked and fooled at the time, and fooled for quite a while. But at the time, I started to see the Matrix and things, and certainly realised that we were in a control system. And I had related to other people who had seen that same thing, and they were telling me that, and I agreed with it, and I still do, of course. But at the time, they left a big sign up in the shop saying birds of a feather. That's like birds of a feather flock together, as if to say, oh, you think you found a flock, do you? You think you found the birds to flock with. Actually, I was wrong, because they were not birds that I could flock with, but they still had correct information. But that was the Matrix once again. I knew it instantly. I'm like, oh, they're angry because they think I found birds. But they're still playing me because I was still wrong. See how clever the Matrix is? It gets you even when you think that even when you think you're on top of it. They're still winning this game. I'm not sure. But either way, I might just go outside for a second. I am quite exhausted, actually. See, I've made a video here and because I think that the Matrix is best to be shown like in the movie The Matrix, where it said, it's no good me telling you about the Matrix, I must show you the Matrix. Well, obviously I can't show the Matrix like in the Matrix movie, because as human beings, we are not on the other side of the Matrix. We are not like that Neo character where we are going to be shown all the vast technology and what's really going on. No, we are really in the dark and have to fathom it out only at a very limited little level. Like when I talk about possession, I know that people and animals are possessed because I know it is not the real animal or the real person. But I still don't see the entity in all its whatever, do I? No, I have no idea. But I will prove it, because there are not only indications, but there are even physical anomalies that could not be, that couldn't be dismissed. And I nearly proved it the other night, but the mobile went off. It probably wouldn't have come out anyway, but it was interesting that the mobile went off because I was looking at the cat. Not even Big Boy Cat, it was the black and white one. I have no real association with Zane the black and white cat. But that cat is possessed too. Most animals are, I would say, just as most people are now. And yet it's never occurred to me until the other night, a few nights ago, because I just don't care, because that cat is not a friend of mine. I don't bring it in much, you know. But, you know, I shouldn't say this because I didn't have the mobile going, so I can't prove it. But, you know, if I have this mobile round the correct way where I can see what I'm actually looking at and filming, then the flash is on. So then you will get a glowing eye. So therefore my possession thing in saying possession is invalid, because the Matrix will say that is a plausible reason why you have a glowing-eyed cat. Okay? I will buy that. Even though I say that there is always a plausible explanation for everything in the Matrix. But I'm going to go along with the Matrix and with you if you believe that there has to be some realistic explanation. And you because even some people that believe in all this, some of this stuff, they'll still say, hey, look, if the sun hits something, that's a reflection. So it's not what you're saying. I say it is, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to go with that. I'm going to say, yes, okay, the sun hits that, it's a reflection. But if I can prove it's not, or if I can prove glowing-eyed cats without a flash, because it only happens supposedly even according to Matrix experts. See, I'm getting angry here, and I'm getting up myself, I know, because I don't really feel this way at all, but the anger, frustration does get to you. If I don't have a flash on and that cat's eyes glow, then that is physical proof of possession, or an anomaly that a cat shouldn't have glowing eyes. Wouldn't you say that's true? Or if I look at a cat, of course, obviously, if I look at it, you'd have to be looking with me. But if you were standing there next to me and you saw it with me, and you won't see it much, by the way, this is another thing too, whereas, you know, because these animals are not walking around showing you what they are. Just as Matrix possessed people don't walk around. Sure, you will get a steely stare sometimes. You will see something dark lurking occasionally, but most of them are actors and they're camouflaging it. But if you get a possessed person that doesn't care, or a psychopath that doesn't care and exposes it, you will really be looking at possession in full force. Most of them are covert. 9 out of 10 possessed people, and they are 9 out of 10 people too, pretty much, as far as I can see, at least in Sydney anyway. But, you know, they will not show you glowing eyes. They will not hit you with a killer stare, but you will catch glimpses, just as you do with the animals. Glimpses. You'll have to look very hard. And most people would dismiss it because I say, hey, look at her. She's raving like a lunatic right now. She's full of anger and frustration and almost venom because she's so angry because she's being fooled and deliberately agitated, deliberately provoked by a negative matrix and its negative possessed beings. But hey, maybe she's possessed then, because that looks more angry than most of your cool, calm, collected, possessed people of the matrix that hide behind false smiles. Yeah, so that I can't even smile, hardly at all. In fact, I would have laughed or smiled so little over the last 3.5 years since this Matrix. You know, before that, I used to laugh at even TV shows, even if I was on my own. You know, now I can hardly even do that. I can't even laugh at shows that I used to laugh at even when I'm on my own. You know, that's, of course, you're never on your own. That's the thing, you know that, because you know you're getting negative frequencies and negative energies into your house, and you know that people, that the matrix beings can see into your house. They see your every move. You have absolutely no life of your own. It's an, you know, it is an absolute, you know, it's a way that you couldn't comprehend this reality being, or how it could possibly ever be. You know, someone said put a camera outside your door. I was suggested that years ago when I said that was before the Matrix, when I said that, oh, sometimes I lose a parcel or something, you know, or maybe some people lurk around a bit, and I didn't really care even. What is the point in me putting a camera outside my front door? What, to show? You know, like most of it is usually past the front door anyway. Like that's why I go outside and I show the cars coming on the street. You know, that's what I say. It's lurking down the street with lights flashing. You know, intimidating, but not right in your face. Except when you're dealing with a full-blown psychopath that you might have to deal with. But even that, you know, that is rare. It's rare in the sense that most are not like that. It's not rare for me, but it's rare when I'm talking about numbers. Because like I've had some people say that, oh, maybe, you know, a family member, maybe they're married to a psychopath, right? That's just an example, okay? Could be another relative, could be a friend even. But if you had to deal with them on a daily basis, you know, it's unavoidable. Whereas the people around, they are not going to be as dominating. But they're still thinking the same way. It's just that they're a joint collaborative covert effort to bring you down. I'm not sure if I put that right. And I certainly shouldn't be making this video today, but I've said, hey, the Matrix has tried to stop me from making the video because I plan to after. And look, it's after dark and I still haven't been outside. And I don't even want to go outside, so I have to force myself because it's unpleasant. But hey, I'm going to be angry if I go outside anyway, so I may as well have the mobile on. It may or may not prove anything. It actually feels very quiet. Maybe I'm raging my own battle here, my own war, because certainly I'm fueling myself. You know, I can feel my own negative energy hitting myself almost. This is how the Matrix loves it. It laps it up. It's had another successful day. And the funny thing is, it's only taken place over a few hours. And it will start up again tomorrow, one way or another, because if the Matrix doesn't get you one way, it will get you with another. I use that example of the frequencies down the street. You know, if they can't bring you down with enough of what they already have, they'll bring in something new. But they are using technology in any and every way they want, and even possessed people every and any way they can. And even poor possessed animals. When I say poor, I mean it's poor only in the sense that, you know, you do wonder what's happened to the big boy cat. And if I knew, you know, there would probably be a lot of venom. And you know that you have to control that because the Matrix wants that too. Because you know that a dear real life animal was eliminated in order to bring a dear anti-life animal into being that is a vehicle for possession. You know, poor big boy cat, poor Derricka, poor Neko, or whatever. And I could mention others. Little Squirt, the cat that I had here for 3 months, but she was not possessed. She was a real life animal. I have proof of that. But she was killed, but they didn't bother replacing her. That was their choice. You know, it was the Matrix choice not to replace her, just to fill you with grief and disgust at why you had failed. Because the Matrix loves you to fail, particularly if you do a good turn. See, I didn't choose to pick up that cat. Me and my son that were living here at the time, we decided to bring the cat home, a good turn. Matrix doesn't like good turns, even though the Matrix left that cat there, or at least probably got people to put it there, to set us up, to bring it back, get attached to it, do a whole lot of stuff for us, and to cause trauma, and then ultimately get rid of it because, well, that was what they decided. Because it's their Matrix. They do what they like. And they don't like it if anyone gets any pleasure or any fun out of anything. It's possible that even my son got some pleasure out of the cat, you know, because, you know, a little bit, which is hard to believe probably, but either way, yeah, I mean, most of the animals that I've known have come to sticky ends, shall we say. Some you're more attached to than others, but I can get upset even by, you know, seeing a dead animal. And I might add too that, you know, you see me here with the pigeons. I like pigeons. And this was interesting too. They can't get to me as much now with this as what they used to. You know, they used to love leaving a dead pigeon, you know, on the footpath, knowing that I would be upset by it and would probably actually have to pick it up and go and bury it. They just lapped it up. They left one the other day, not very long. I haven't done that for a long time, on the road, on the busy road where it was squashed. Obviously, I couldn't do anything anyway, and it's whatever. But, you know, I actually had to say to myself, this is a Matrix and this is a setup. I'm not going to start getting upset by this. It's the first time I haven't got really upset by that type of thing. Because in the past I didn't know it was a Matrix and it was deliberately set up. I used to just get angry to think that some people had killed it, you know, whether it be accidental or not. Usually I'd think it was some sort of accident. But, you know, but they still do that, you know. And I won't mention more about when I go, because it was right near this shop that I always go into to buy the coffee, you see. But that's just the Matrix, you know. That's the God entity, that's its anti-life. You know, it may have even been a real pigeon for all I know, because I'm pretty sure that they do like... But either way, it's still a staged scenario to bring your frequency down, to upset you, and to remind you that you know, that you're... You know, that is Matrix people too, don't forget, because the Matrix possessed people, they get annoyed by human antics, because they're possessed by negative entities that are anti-life, you know. And so they if they can't be, you know, the centre of attention, you know, I wish they would be the centre of attention, give themselves all their damn attention and get away from me. That's what I wish. They can have all their limelight. They can have their bloody fake Matrix. Oh, dear. Sorry about that. Oh, sorry about that. Sorry about that. I might have to delete the video. Perhaps I better go outside. But see, they can't dance in their own limelight. You know, if they were any good, like... I'm like, have your limelight. Like, I look at the demigods. Okay, so maybe I see them in a slightly different light now to how I used to. That's probably true. But if I thought it would make them happy, I'm almost like, I pretend that you're what you are, and because they still have some good qualities. They're very impressive. I'm quite happy to do that. They can dance in their little matrix. They can have it. They just don't expect me to dance and go down with you all. That's all. Don't expect me to do some of the things that you do in your dirty little filthy matrix. Your evil little antics and your anti-life policy on everything. If you enjoy the possession of your little negative entities, you can have them. I don't care. But you have too much of all this negative stuff. I don't think it can sustain itself. It'll just fall into itself and destroy itself, just as the humans that allow themselves too much possession. And I know it's sad because you're dealing with children. You're dealing with children that, like the children in The Innocents, were not really bad children. They were lonely, they were desperate, they got seduced, they got tricked, they needed parents, they allowed entertainment of negative spirits because they probably didn't even realise how negative they were. They probably would have realised some things. But even us humans, we have our good and our bad points. You just miss the bad points because you say, hey, there's some good things. And sometimes the good things are a facade. That's when you're dealing with psychopathic people or negative entities, to where the good or the beneficial things or something that might be positive for you really isn't. You can't see that. And I should know because I've dealt with it and been fooled by it all my life, and could still be fooled by it, and still am sometimes. But I wake up a lot quicker now, that's all. Because in the past humans tend to want to look for the better things as opposed to the negative. Real humans, I think, do tend to do that. Whereas the possessed people of the Matrix, they only look at everything negative. They're only interested in everything negative. They're only interested in destructive things. They actually don't like anything too positive because they don't feel that they can... They don't feel that they can actually muster that up in themselves anymore. They feel it's easier to, as I've said before a long time ago in videos, and others have said it too. Who does it first, I don't know. But the thing is that, it's kind of silly in a way. Because Matrix people are very competitive. But they don't want to compete with some people, even though they may be able to. They find it easier just to eliminate or destroy something. They're like, that's still winning, and it's easier, particularly if they've got their minions. So they like playing the game, but it is more like a cat, with a mouse. That's just their mindset. And that, like some people, like myself, I'd say, if I'm playing a game, I want to win based on what I'm playing, because that's my skill. But the Matrix people aren't like that, neither is the God entity. They're like, we win by any means. We don't care, even though we created the games and we make the rules, we will win by any means, because it's just about winning. It's not about how you play the game. It's not about who's got the most talent. It's not about who's the best. It's just about winning, And if we need 1,000 people against one person to win a simple football game, we'll bring it in. We don't care that it's no longer really a football game or even a proper game. We'll just do that. Because it's only about really because this matrix does revolve around human beings now because of the time. And so it is only about taking down as many human beings as they can in the dying stages of a dying matrix or a dying non-life reality. It's actually already dead in a way. The only thing that's alive in it is human beings. The matrix itself has always been a dead reality or a dark reality, and the beings that are in it like that. They are of they are the dead. I don't know why I said that, but see, that's the only way I can describe it. They're non-life. They're technical dead. Technology is dead, and they are technical. So it's dead if you compare it to a human being. It's not about saying what is better or worse. It's just about saying that you have different forms of life in a particular region, and they're not compatible. And if you're like a human being, even if you say you don't care, as maybe some don't, you need to care because that technology is out to destroy you. So it's not about saying, oh, it's different and maybe we're not compatible, so I'll just keep away. It's not like that, because the technology will not keep away from you. See, it's like the stalker and the stalked. The stalker ain't going to leave you alone. The stalker's obsessed with you. It doesn't care that you're like, you can go and do what you want. You can go and even stalk someone else if you want. You can stalk yourself. Couldn't care less. It's not like that. They're single-minded, they're technological, and they're one-eyed, and they only have one sole purpose in their entire existence or reality. And that purpose is not a benefit to a real human being. No, it is everything that is against a real human being. And that is because of their mentality. Because that is how they think. And you see it in the reality through its minions. That's how I understand it, and also through the psychopath. If you're dealing with full-blown psychopaths, you are dealing with possessed people that are operating for this matrix god entity and its disciples or its other gods, depending on how many there are of these things. They're technological beings. They're anti-life, anti-human, if you consider the word human to be life, but I don't really know. I would say that they belong here and we don't, because why would a life force be in a technological region? So I would go along with even a comment that was left in an old video. I only got it recently, which is interesting. I didn't think people watched my old videos, which I'm sure most don't, but maybe someone just happened on it. And they left a comment about trying to concentrate here because it was very, someone beeped their horn when I said that outside. You know, that's a huge semi-trailer beeping its horn down there. That means yes. That, and even this was over my head because I don't have great knowledge of the real history of things, or I don't even understand a lot of stuff. I only know what happens to me, and the little bit of information I jump onto it pretty quick. Some people say that I jump on things pretty quick, and I just happen to jump onto the right things. Now, whether that is coincidence or whether it is deliberately left there, that's right, the synchronicity. So, maybe I've just not been given much in the past. And if you don't believe in things, so therefore you don't latch onto them. You have to have a basic belief. If you know that you're in a controlled matrix, then a lot springs from that for me. So then I will say, oh yes, of course there's synchronicity, of course everything has to be left for you to some extent because that's part of the game. It has to be. That's just how I see it, and that would have to be so, I would imagine. But either way, that was left that where was it see, I've lost my train of thought. They did that deliberately so that I don't relate to the person that left the comment. It'll come back to me, but I shouldn't be thinking while I'm making a video. You know, I should be. Oh yeah, that we are really that we as humans, or whatever we are, because human is just the word, but let's just say, I say that we're a life form, and this matrix is anti-life and technological. It's a technological, artificial matrix or realm or whatever, or earth, whatever you want to say, but it's not life. It's artificial, it's technological, whereas humans are life. So yeah, like this person that left the comment said that we are inside of an artificial realm, whereas we really belong outside of it. And I would say that makes sense. You know, whether we're meant to have some input into this artificial domain, but I say that it's because there are other real life forms in this artificial domain, and we're meant to, perhaps we should have connected with them or encountered them in our lifetime maybe, because I don't think that you can really change an artificial domain. But maybe you can, I don't know. That strikes me as a bit of a contradiction, but certainly this person was correct in saying that we don't really belong here or in this particular realm. That would make sense to me, because I've said in other videos, fish out of water. Like, why are we, a fish that's meant to be in water, and I've said I like to be in water, but I'm never in water. That's because I'm in a matrix, that I want you to be in a comfortable surroundings, to where you feel safe, and to where you feel comfortable, and to where you just feel peaceful. Because that's right, even like myself, if I like water but I'm never allowed near the beach or don't have a swimming pool or whatever, the closest I get is a shower, and that's usually stressful because I'm trying to get clean, because so it's like that. I better go outside. I have made no sense. I don't think I should be putting this video out, mainly because I lost my cool there. In fact, I'm never really cool, but usually I don't lose it for a video. But I was determined to make one. And I only hope that, I don't think it's good to even verbally be too, I look flushed, don't I? That's because I am flushed. I put a coat on because I was ready to go out the door, and yet I have not even made it out the door. I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it out the door without losing